Today we have to debunk some more misinformation, and I gotta be honest, I do hate making these videos. I hate that I have to make them. I hate that, unfortunately, it's not gonna stop millions and millions of people from being misinformed, because my reach as a channel is only like this big. Like it's barely even a drop in the bucket of the ocean of where people are getting information on Switch 2. And obviously, I like to think my following, a following that follows a Nintendo-specific YouTube channel that covers all this stuff, would already be informed on the given situation, especially given all the reports we have done over the year about where Switch 2 units are actually coming from for the United States. But unfortunately, due to an article published out of Asia, we're now seeing a bunch of headlines exactly like this one over at My Nintendo News. This headline says, the Nikkei, so that's where the information is coming from, Nintendo Switch 2 in line for 145% tariff hit, which it's not in line for that, but we'll get into that in a moment. Nikkei is reporting this morning that the looming trade war will see the Nintendo Switch 2 hit with 145% in tariffs when it launches on June 5th. This is literally not correct. There is a 145% tariff on the US to China, but that is not where Nintendo Switch 2 units come from. Nintendo Switch 2 units come from, well, let's go to Nintendo's own official website to tell you. Here's the Switch 2 on their website. We scroll down, System, Switch 2, release date, June 5th, country of origin, Vietnam. Not China, Vietnam. Yeah, Nintendo is already telling us where the U.S. supplies come from. This is on the Nintendo.com, Nintendo of America website. They are telling us it comes from Vietnam. Okay, so Vietnam does not have a 145% tariff. And this is why I'm really, really confused, because they're not the only outlet reporting on this. We have Nintendo Everything doing the exact same thing. And nowhere in any of these articles does it note that on Nintendo's own official website that it actually does say Vietnam. They're just running with the headline, I guess, for clicks. I don't know. This actually comes from a much bigger website. First website I saw it on was Insider Gaming. They're also saying it. And when you go in here, nothing in here actually explains that Nintendo Switch 2 is actually being made in Vietnam. Nobody's bringing it up, despite it being listed on Nintendo's own website. One more time. Let's look at this one more time. Nintendo's own website says country of origin, Vietnam, system, Switch 2. This isn't complicated. Nintendo's telling us where Switch 2 comes from. In fact, we have this report that actually explains how nearly 800,000 Switch 2s were shipped to the United States in February. That place? Bloomberg. Yeah, 800,000 from Vietnam in February. Nintendo has the ability to make nearly 1 million units per month in Vietnam to ship to the US. Yes, that makes them the provider, the main provider, maybe even the sole provider of full Nintendo Switch 2 in-box units for retail, not China. So where did this all come from? Well, it came from Nikkei. So let's go read Nikkei's article on this. It's been obviously Google translated. And it says, China made Nintendo Switch 2 in line for 145% tariff hit, supplier warns. Really bad headline because that's not what's going on, but let's read what's going on. So it says Taipei, Nintendo Switch 2, and other gaming consoles made in China are likely to be hit by the trade war between the world's two biggest economies, despite the U.S. announcing over the weekend that smartphones, notebook computers, and certain other tech products will be exempt from Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs. I want to note, when you actually read that story, go look at the actual stuff and go look at the fine print. Video game consoles are actually not exempt. So, and the exemption also has other things going along with it where it's not like a true exemption. Anyways, moving on. According to an internal assessment memo by a major Apple and Nintendo supplier, as seen by Nikkei Asia, so it's someone who supplies for both companies. Most of Apple's products are made in China. Game consoles are still subject to 145% US tariff on goods made in China. That is a fact. You know what goods made in China? In fact, the entire US supply is PlayStation 5. Not Nintendo Switch 2. Anyways, U.S. tariff on goods made in China, which means products like Nintendo's highly anticipated new console are in line for a massive hit. Except they're not in line for a massive hit because, as pointed out, their supply comes from Vietnam. This is basic research, guys. It's on the official website. Forget the shipping data. It's on the official website. What are we doing? This is so basic. Basic research. Go back to the article. All right. The majority of Switch consoles are made in China. Okay. Yes, I will say more Switch consoles are made in China than other countries because Nintendo supplies for the entire world. The US supply does not come from China, and they diversified this years ago during the pandemic. Why? Because they were worried about tariffs being a thing one day with China and the US. Nintendo planned ahead for what's happening right now. They planned for US and China to go at a tariff war. They just figured it was going to happen someday. So they already planned for this. Going back here, Nikkei Asia has learned with a relatively small portion made in Vietnam. Yes, a relatively small portion compared to the overall manufacturing of Switch 2. That much is right? A majority of Switch 2s are going to be made in China. Those are the ones going to Europe. Those are the ones going to all the Asian countries, Japan, which is a huge territory for Nintendo to sell Switch 2s in, Australia, etc. Yes, those will be supplied by China. The US is being supplied by, hold on, say it with me again. What is it being supplied by? Vietnam. So yeah, relative to the total production of Switch 2, Vietnam makes a smaller percentage of units, but what Vietnam is doing is being the sole provider of full Nintendo Switch 2s to the United States at nearly 1 million units per month. It is the country Nintendo is using to assemble and ship Switch 2s to the United States. So 145% tariffs don't matter. They are irrelevant to the Nintendo Switch 2 coming to the United States. Now, there is some things that are impacted. We'll talk about that. But as we go down in here, you'll see they talk about the reciprocal tariffs, and then they go into how many of Sony's PlayStation 5 consoles are made in China. So they do know PlayStation 5 is impacted. In fact, they're way more impacted than Switch 2. And they go on to talk about other products facing tariffs. And, China TVs face 156.4% tariff, yada, yada, yada. But that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on Switch 2. The point is, this is complete misinformation. Nintendo Switch 2s for the United States are assembled and shipped out of Vietnam. That means the 145% tariff has no impact on the actual Switch 2 box that we buy on June 5th, that we receive our Switch 2 from, will have no impact. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be any impact on Switch 2, and it's not on the system itself, it's on the accessories. Yes, folks, there are some accessories being sold in the US that are only made in China. Now, some of those accessories, such as the power adapter, you don't have to worry about it when it's packed in the box because those would be shipped to Vietnam when they're assembling the unit and putting it in the box to come to the US. Ergo, those would actually, even though they're made in China, would be shipped out of Vietnam, so they're not subject to the tariffs. But they are subject if you're buying it separately. So, like the charging brick and the cable, the official Nintendo one, when they do sell the extra one on the shelf, sure, that might double in the listed price right now, which is $30. Now it might be $60. And there are other Switch 2 accessories like that could see an increase unless Nintendo can move the manufacturing out of China for those products. But that's a different conversation than talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 itself. The actual units on June 5th are going to have 145% tariff. That is complete misinformation, and it starts with the article from Nikkei. And I'm so tired. These outlets that we rely on so much for accurate reporting lack the basic ability to go to Nintendo.com. Nintendo is not at fault for these headlines. We can talk about all the things Nintendo is at fault for. These headlines are not it. Nintendo is not at fault for people being unable to read their official website. And the thing is, we have these reports by Bloomberg that tell us all the units are coming from Vietnam. There's over 1 million units in the US right now, probably almost 2 million at this point, just from Vietnam. All right, guys, there's nothing I can do. I can only make videos like this and pray reporting gets better out there. Really disappointed to see none of the Vietnam stuff listed on Nintendo's website mentioned in any of the articles, let alone the clickbait headlines, because Nikkei used that headline, and Nikkei is incorrect because the 145% tariff doesn't apply to the US units. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Robojanz from Nintendo Prime, and I'll catch you in the next video.